And then I'm going to try to share it to Facebook. It kind of messes me up sometimes because it starts right away in the other group, but it doesn't tell me. So I don't know. And then there'll be like feedback, which is super awesome to listen to. Hold on. Virtual Fit Club. Can one of you guys let me know though, if it does start going live in there, if you can see it, or actually, I guess I can also look. Zoom is preparing the live stream. Okay, got it. Awesome. It says we're being live streamed. So it shows me frozen. Okay. I don't know. Okay. Got it. It shows me frozen. Okay. So what I have to do is like turn the volume off of the Facebook Live, or I hear myself like with a 10-second delay. And I'm like, So we're excited because we decided this month that we would, well, I mean, first of all, I know this is crazy, and I think I sneezed and August was done. I don't know about you guys. But yeah, it went by so fast. I know September is like a chaotic time, but we've had such incredible stuff happening in our virtual fit club and in our communities, and even, you know, connecting with some people that have been interested possibly about coaching. So we wanted to just do kind of a fun Mythbusters version of coaching, the coach edition of it. Just kind of some of those things that maybe I know. So Amanda and I are going to kind of go back and forth about this a little bit, but like things that we maybe thought why we couldn't coach, and which people tell me all the time, the reason why they probably think they couldn't coach. And we're going to bust some of those myths because you might not have thought about it a specific way. And I know for me, that was a big thing. So there's 4 myths that we're actually going to go through. And I know whether you're watching on Facebook or you're watching on the Zoom, you can drop in the chat or in the comments. If any of these are like, yeah, I totally felt that, or I thought that, or I think that. The first one is I could never coach because I'm already way too busy. That was mine. I was like, way too busy. So we'll jump into that one. The second one is I could never coach because I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to be a salesperson. Ew, ick, yuck. The third one is I could never coach because I'm not in perfect shape, or I'm not a health and fitness expert. And the fourth one we're going to touch on is I could never coach because isn't everyone already doing it? Like everybody I know is already a coach. So why would I need to do it, or why would I do it? Okay. So if any of those speak to you, let me know. But we will start with the I'm already too busy. And I think Amanda is actually perfect to speak on this. Because she is so busy, right? She's so busy. So Amanda, tell me, kind of walk through with me, like if that crossed your mind, if you're like, I couldn't do this business on top of everything else, and maybe tell everybody a little bit like what your typical day and all of the things you have to do are like.
Yeah, so when I first started and was asked to coach, that was honestly the first thing that crossed my mind. I work a full-time job. The hours can be random. You know, I work when the work is needed, so it just depends on what kind of is going on. So yeah, it just I have 2 kids, so you know, taking care of the kids, full-time job, school, they're in French immersion too, and I don't speak French. So homework and stuff like that. Just kind of, you know, you can make up all the excuses and pile them all on top of one another, but at the end of the day, you know, I still found time in small pockets to make it work. So ideally, you know, the beginning of the day starts pretty early for me, just because of right now I'm doing 75 hard. Generally, I don't start my days at 3:45 a.m. But during 75 hard, I am starting fairly early. So I do start off and go for my walk first thing in the morning. And then I come back and kind of wait for my husband to get off to work. And then I go downstairs and load up Zoom, work out on Zoom with the girls, just for that extra accountability. Sometimes I do not feel like working out because I know that I have a super crazy busy day ahead of me, and I can really get in my head and start kind of making those excuses of why I could wait till later to do it. Yeah, and then throughout the day, I get my kids ready, and I just use kind of like a time blocking schedule to schedule little pockets of time to do those little coaching kind of income producing tasks, I guess you would say, as well as on top of just kind of, follow-ups and just checking in with the groups. And yeah, and then generally on my lunch break, I always usually take some time to, do whatever is on my list. I try and break it down throughout the day of kind of what my tasks are. That way I'm not like overthinking it and wasting my time. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason. So I remember hearing this too, and they're like, busy people make the best coaches. And that's because they know how to get stuff done. And Amanda is such a great example of that. And I was actually just talking to Sarah about this today. And I was saying, I have to sometimes remember that anybody who is watching now sees me doing this like full time. My kids are bigger and those kinds of things. But when I started this business, I was actually, the kids were small. Like I had a toddler, a 5 and a 2-year-old. Our 5-year-old was sick. So we had lots of hospital and specialist appointments and travel for that. Christopher's a shift worker, and I was working full time in real estate. So I had like all the balls up in the air, the kind where you're like, if I add one more thing, I'm going to drop them all and I'm going to freak out. But that's actually not what happened. So very similar to Amanda, I just kind of reevaluated where my time was going, my priorities. And it wasn't that I didn't have enough time. It was really that I just wasn't doing a very good job of managing my time. So I just kind of had to get clear on, okay, well, when the kids go to bed, I can do a couple of things, or, in the morning I can do a couple of things, or if my tiny terror at the time would have a nap, I could do a couple of things, like those sorts of things. So just, it's not really like all of us are busy, and busy is so relative, but there are there's always somebody busier than me that is like crushing this out. So I like to kind of try to remember that. And the big perk is like what Amanda said, that when we're in those really busy seasons of our life, it's so amazing to have that extra level of accountability. Because before, like I would have been like, okay, cool, like today's going to be too stressful, I can't fit my workout in, instead of being like, I need to fit my workout in, it's non-negotiable, and I'm going to feel better in my stressful day because of that. Coaching just kind of adds that extra level of accountability.
100%.
Yeah. So the second one is the dreaded, this was another thing that ran through my head, that I could never coach because I am not a salesperson. I don't want to be salesy, ick, yuck, you. And especially coming from, at the time, like when I started, I was a realtor. So I was already selling things. Like that's what I was doing. Big things, big houses. And I was like, I do not want to like be peddling other things and selling them and all over my, social media, trying to get people to buy things. So that was kind of like a hesitation that I had. Did you feel that way too, Amanda? Is that something that you kind of thought about?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's easy to get in your head and think that that's what you have to do is sell, when that's actually not it at all. You're just sharing your journey and inviting people to do it with you. And when you're doing it every single day, or not every single day, but when you're doing it, it just vibes off of you. And especially when you do become a coach, just taking that time and how do I say that? Yeah, I kind of blanked, but
Story of my life lately. I was trying to
my
tell a story to my hairdresser, and I'm like, I don't know the words.
sorry, my kids were trying to talk to me as I was saying it, and I'm like, I can't talk.
No, you're like behind the screen. Shh.
Waving in the corner on the bye. So what were you saying again? I'm so sorry.
So that's okay. You were talking about how you really were just sharing, and not necessarily every day, but when you actually went and talked about the things you were doing, like it was vibing off of you, like the energy. I feel like maybe that's what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's easy to get excited about it when you're doing it. And, like I said, you don't have to do it every day, but when you are doing it on a regular basis, and it's easy to, talk about it. If you're not doing it, then it makes it kind of icky. And,
Yes.
salesy, I guess. But when you're doing the workouts, using the supplements, it's so easy to just share that experience and how it makes you feel and how it's doable for people that don't have a lot of time in their day. You know, how you have worked it into your busy life. It is hands down, you know, one of the best things that I have come out of this is taking away that I don't have to be a salesperson, because that was probably, again, my second hesitation, because I don't like being, you know, pressured into anything. I don't like those messages that you get from random people that you haven't talked to in months, just saying, you know, hey girl, you know, try this thing. And it's like, oh, 44 people asked me last week. But
Yes.
sure. But you know, you just take it with a grain of salt and keep going, and just remember that you're just sharing, you know, your journey. And when you're doing it, it's easy to invite to, because it's easy to get excited about.
Yes, I feel like you said that perfectly. I actually made a note because I was going to say, like, that's something that hopefully I feel pretty confident that nobody has ever got a hey girl message from me 6 years into this and a lot of success. I don't know who's calling me. Oh, the Inspiration Tribe, apparently. Oops, and I accidentally answered. Sorry. So 6 years into this, I've never been somebody that cold messages strangers on the internet trying to sell them things or invite them to parties or be like, you need to do this. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Not even nice to meet you, but you should buy this thing from me. We train you how to not have to do that, because like Amanda said, it's something where you're doing something and you love it. And I always love the example of, like, I used to talk about like a dry shampoo or something, or Disney Plus was something that like I was so excited for when it came out, because I'm a huge Disney fan, as a lot of you guys know. And I didn't make any money from telling people how awesome Disney Plus was, but I was legitimately excited about it. It was something that I ordered, and I was like, oh my gosh, all the classic movies are on here, and I'm so excited. I'm going to make the kids watch this and da, da, da. And I was effectively like selling this thing, not making any money on it though. So I didn't feel icky about it because I wasn't making money. But then we get into this weird space where we're like, oh, for sharing something, we're potentially going to earn an income from it. Then it's like icky. But if you're not doing it in that kind of way, if you're like, hey, this is something that I'm doing, I would love to actually do this with you. It would be so much more fun with an accountability partner. And for me, it was really about talking to the old me. So being like you, Lindsay, you 6 years ago, you didn't know that this was a thing, right? Like there's so many people that don't know this is a thing. And it changed so much of my life that I was like, I feel like I have to tell people about this. And if to not tell people about this would be kind of rude and a little bit selfish.
100%.
Yeah. So also, Jill, your hair, it looks amazing. I love it. Great cut.
Thank you.
We're just going to move on to the third one, Jill, so you can pipe in on this too if you want.
Okay, sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
I was almost late too. Lindsay almost did it on her own.
I thought I was going to be on here on my own. When Sarah showed up, I was like, oh, Sarah, you're here. Thank goodness. And then Marie, and I'm like, oh, we've got a whole gang. Okay. So the third thing is that I could never be a coach because I'm not in perfect shape, or I'm not a fitness and nutrition expert. And I think all three of us probably feel like have our own vibe on that too. So let's kind of, maybe Jill, you can kind of start us off talking about that too. Like, was that something that when you were going to start, thought about coaching, you're like, that's why?
Yeah, I would say that was definitely like one of my like biggest hesitations. And then at kind of like different points, that's something that has come up for me again. But I think the thing to always keep in mind is that we don't relate to someone who's already at day 100. We relate a lot more to someone who's still like trying to like figure it out. Like obviously we get like any of us get way more engagement and people talking to us when we're talking about like something that's difficult or kind of like being in the moment. So I think that's really like important to let go of that. And it's not your job to be a fitness and nutrition expert, right? That's what Beachbody provides to us. Like, and Walla is the fitness expert. If you're doing 645, Autumn and Alana are our nutrition experts. Your job is being a professional cheerleader, and you can do that no matter where you are in your journey. And sometimes earlier in your journey, you can be very like empathetic to someone else's road, because you can say, yeah, I've been there, and hey, here's what I did. We only need to be one step in front of the people who we're helping. And a lot of times, like, all that is that you are actually doing a workout program, or you're actually watching your nutrition.
Yes. That's so bang on. Yes. Amanda, was that something that like crossed your mind too? Like, oh, I'm not like super fitness and nutrition focused, or I don't have like 6-pack abs or whatever.
Yeah, I struggled going to the gym because I didn't really understand a lot of the moves, and just I didn't feel confident at first that I could help, really anybody, because I wasn't like a fitness instructor. And like Jill said it perfectly, we are, the cheerleaders to get them to those nutritionists and those super trainers. Like, she said it perfectly. I can't add any more on to it. But other than
I know, I was like that.
Like I was the exact same way. I'm not a professional at all. I could barely even read a nutrition label off the box or what it meant. So like I'm farthest, from an expert, and I'm not afraid to admit that to people, like I didn't know. I still don't know all the things, but I'm learning as I go.
And you're seeing success, right? And I think the other thing that was really powerful for me, like I had about 50 pounds that I thought I needed to lose, and I lost 6 when I started coaching. So I still had a significant journey ahead of myself. But the thing that blew my mind was how simple this was. Like in my brain, I had overcomplicated it so much. And there's so much information out there, right? Like there's literally like dozens, thousands of diets. There are thousands of experts saying this is what you should do, that's what you should do, to do this, to do, and you're like overwhelmed, so overwhelmed that maybe you don't start. But for me, I was like, okay, like I can do 3 weeks, I can do 21 days, I can do telling me like portion sizes that I need to eat, and I can do a 30-minute workout. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Was it still really hard for me? Yes. But was it complicated? No. And I just, like you guys said, I just followed what my trainer and my nutritionist told me to do, except it was so much more accessible and affordable to me because it was something that, was produced for a greater number of people. So I think that was part of, like, I was like, you know what, I do have a long way to go, but there's also people who were, me 6 pounds ago, and they haven't even started. Like you guys said, like they just haven't even figured out how to get going, how to make their day one. So it's super powerful. The last one, and then we'll kind of wrap this up, is that I could never be a coach because isn't everyone already a coach? And this is something that I will say 6 years ago was not really a thing for me. Well, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. My coach was local-ish to me. Her coach was also local-ish to me. So I did kind of think that for a hot second. I was like, oh, maybe like they already know all the people that I went to high school with or whatever, or everybody. And as things have grown, I've gone through the stages where I'm like, oh man, like there's so many Beachbody coaches in our city, or there's so many Beachbody coaches in Ontario or whatever. But what happens is you kind of, when you get into this like world, you start to be kind of in a bubble. So you see a lot of people and you're like, you think that those people are all, that it just makes it kind of, have you guys ever heard this analogy where if you buy a red car, then when you go out driving, like all of a sudden you see red cars all the time. They've always been there, but you're just hyper aware of them because you now have a red car. It's kind of like that. I feel like that's kind of the analogy. So I'm curious to know, because so our team is actually, there's a lot of us that are local. We've also got people who are in the US. We've also got people who are across Canada. We've even got some UK coaches. But for the girls who are maybe like have intersecting friends and areas, like I'm curious to know, Amanda or Jill, like go ahead. Was this something like you thought too? Like you were like, kind of.
That was definitely something I thought, because so Lindsay's like my grandma coach. So my coach was also a teacher, And we had some intersecting friends, and some of those friends had already joined Lindsay, and some of those friends had joined her. And so like some of the people that I work with had already started. And so I really did think like, oh, there's always like everyone is like doing this. But I think we really like make our world like smaller when we do that, when we think that like everyone's always out there. And it's not about how many people are there. It's that your story resonates with a certain kind of person. And while Lindsay and I are like very similar, there are things that are different that some people are going to come to me, or some people are going to go to her. Or like even Christine, who we've really worked well together. We run our free group together, and there's lots of things that her and I have in common, but then there's lots of things where we're a totally different niche. And I think if you look at some of like the most successful coaches in Beachbody, a lot of them are like best friends who would have had similar social circles, or there's like quite a few like sisters who have like totally killed it. So the clues for success are there if you look for those instead of looking for the reason why it can't work.
Yes. I love that. That's super powerful. Did you think that too, Amanda? Because your coach is local to you as well, that you signed up with.
Yeah. And I also knew a couple of other coaches locally to me as well too. So it definitely crossed my mind, like, how am I, supposed to do this when there's so many people? But again, Jill said it perfectly. Those people that follow you, you might have similar friends, but you might not be as relatable. I might relate to Jill more, so it's about building those relationships, being relatable. Me and Erin, who's on this call, we have a lot of mutual friends. We work together, but she has interests. She has 1,000 more friends on her Facebook that we're not mutual with. So we might have 100 friends that are mutual, but she still has 800 to 900 people that aren't mutually friends with me. So she's still hitting, and talking to a huge audience that isn't similar to me. And even if it is, we're different. So what is going to be relatable to me might not be relatable to her. So it just all depends on your story, really.
Yes, I feel like that. Yes. I also think too, again, going back to that like whole kind of being in a bubble thing, that there's like, and the intersection thing, like, so like how you guys were saying, like how, like, maybe we live in the same city, but maybe our kids are different ages, or maybe you don't have kids, or maybe, what your profession is something that people can relate to, or maybe you love something quirky that those people love too. It's really, I loved what you said, Jill, about how it's like really like not looking for the clues that it's actually the success is there, but being like looking for the reason out. I feel like that was me with all of these things that we listed, was that I was like, I'm a big pros and cons list person. So I was like putting all the pros and all the cons, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, no, I couldn't do it because of this, or I couldn't do it because of that. And then I was like, but the pros for me were so powerful, like the accountability to my journey that I still had a long way to go on. The idea of being part of a community, because that's kind of my favorite part. I didn't really recognize that for the longest time. I love our challenge groups. That's actually what got me into coaching, because I was so excited to be able to do that even for one other person. But then the coaching community is like just another level of community that we have, and a connection that we have. And yeah, it's just super powerful. I forget. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is, the cool thing is like what Amanda was saying about having like the 800 non-mutual friends with Erin. The other thing is like, this is a virtual business, right? So geography does not actually matter. That's how we end up with people like Jillian because Jillian's connections to the UK, like she brought our first UK coaches into our team, right? So even though we live like just down the road from each other, like Jillian created an overseas team, like, and you're not bound by geography, which is kind of really cool about having a virtual business. Because that was something that I really recognized with being in real estate, was like, really, like I could only do what I could do in my small area, but with this business, that's not the case. Like you can't just work with the people that you can actually hands-on work with. Like you can actually work virtually with so many people. So I love that. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add, Jill, Amanda.
I think real estate's like a great example too. Cause like Kyle and I say all the time, we're like, how are there this many real estate agents in this town? And then I always think, okay, I think that about real estate agents, but there's definitely not as many Beachbody coaches as there are like real estate agents. So obviously there's still lots.
It's so true. It's so true. Your people will find you and you will find your people. And there are, oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. 6 years into this, I cannot believe I still have conversations with people that do not know what Beachbody is. That I'm like, they're like, what are you doing? Like, I want to do what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, like, do you not watch my stuff? I'm like barfing about it all the time. Like, clearly you should have seen it. But they're like, no, like, so what's this Beachbody thing? Like, tell me about, and they didn't actually even know what it was. And I'm like, okay, so me thinking that everybody knows what this is not actually true. Like, there's still lots of people that don't even know this is a thing. So that's kind of cool. So I just wanted to add, and then we'll wrap this up, that our new coach mentorship actually kicks off on September 6th. So it will ease you into it, because we know like the first week back to school can be a little chaotic, but we have so much exciting stuff coming, guys. The Mixed Bike is coming to the US this month. Body is launching in full this month. We have new programs coming. We have so much exciting stuff that, like, if you have been considering this, if you've been kind of like, but any of this spoke to you, talk to your coach, because you need to talk more about this, because honestly, we all had probably the same hesitations that you did. But also there has never been a better time to jump in to this business. And this isn't something that you're going to want to sit on the sidelines for and like say next year, be like, man, I should have probably jumped in and done that. And, you know, pushed past the fear and got a little bit uncomfortable. Now is such an amazing time to actually jump in with us. So we're so thankful that you watched. I'm so grateful that Amanda and Jill were here. It was a little bit of a crazy day for all of us, I think. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. We'll have a recording. So if anybody missed any of this, or obviously it will stay in the Virtual Fit Club too. But happy last day of August. It's crazy. Okay, so good things coming in September. I can't wait. And thanks for hopping on, guys. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.